Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Jessie Zarrow, and I am the Marketing and Outreach Coordinator here for Bywater Solutions. I am joined with Sam Passy, Bob Henhoff, and Mark Noble here, and we are going to talk to you today about amping up discovery with open source software. The four of us were originally slated to speak at the Computers and Libraries Conference, which was postponed due to the current state of events in our country. And so we decided that we would do this virtually for anyone to attend. So I will first start by letting us all go through and do some introductions. Again, my name is Jessie Zarrow, and I'm the Marketing and Outreach Coordinator at Bywater Solutions. I've worked with both Bob, Sam, and Mark to kind of get things going to launch Aspen for our partners here. And so I will let the rest of our presenters give a quick introduction.
Hi, I'm Mark Noble. I'm the Aspen Discovery Team Lead and main developer on Aspen Discovery.
Hi, I'm Sam Passy with Uena County Library and Uena Basin Library Consortium in Northeast Utah, and happy to be here.
And I'm Bob Henhoff. I manage Aspencat, which is a consortium in Colorado for the Colorado Library Consortium.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So for all of our listeners out there, you'll see there's both a chat box and a Q&A box. We'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation, and we'll also have some time reserved at the end to answer any additional questions that you may have. So with that, we will jump right in. So the first thing we wanted to talk to you about was essentially open source in general. You know, there's a lot of myths out there, you know, that people are sometimes nervous about switching to open source. And we thought that it would be a good idea for us to kind of talk about what some of the myths versus the reality is here for open source software. So, you know, one of the big ones is sometimes open source is perceived as a less secure option than your proprietary software, when the reality is open source software is a great place where security issues really can be identified by members of the community. They can be tracked, and then patches can be applied and fixed in the system. So it's a great way to kind of move things very quickly in the community. I can talk very quickly about in the Koha community, we saw a need for batch editing due dates for items because libraries are closed now for a period of time. The community worked together, wrote a patch, and then pushed it out so people can, you know, add that in and start editing their own due dates. So that's one of the great things about the open source community, is being able to identify those needs and fix them quickly. Another myth is you need an IT staff to maintain your software. You know, the reality is there's companies like us and many others around the world and here in the US that support open source platforms. Mark will talk a little bit about it throughout this presentation, but we are essentially like your IT support where we can maintain it. You can contact us to ask questions. We help you set it up. We provide training, and we free up the time that your staff would generally spend on it. So it's a great opportunity to work hand in hand with a company. Another myth is there's less support for open source software, when again the reality is there are vendors, you know, worldwide that really support, develop, and improve open source software. Right here for Aspen, we'll talk about this as well. The community is growing. More and more people are starting to use Aspen. We're getting great feedback from libraries. You'll hear from two of our main players today, Bob and Sam, as they talk about, you know, they see needs in their community, in their library, and then they work with Mark to build that functionality into the system. The last myth that is quite a popular one is anyone can change the code. And again, the reality is developments require a quality assurance testing piece. So if a patch is written, that is tested by users in the community. They go through multiple testing phases, approved by a quality assurance team, and then the lead developer or the release manager puts the stamp of approval on it before it is actually pushed out into the code. So there is a good quality assurance that goes through that process. Okay. A little bit about the history of open source discovery. Viewfind was developed back in 2007 till present. It's still being actively developed today by Villanova. There's a large group of individuals in the Viewfind community. Out of that, there's another one that is Project Blacklight that started around 2009 and is still active in the community. PICA, and I'm going to pause and let Mark talk a little bit more about this because Mark was worked hand in hand with Marmot to build this.
Yeah, so PICA kind of grew out of Viewfind in order to kind of meet the specific needs of the Marmot Consortium. I worked for Marmot for several years as an independent consultant, also doing work for Douglas County, Wake County, in North Carolina, as well as Anythink Libraries in Colorado, kind of working to build that system and do some fine tuning for those library specific needs. In 2012, I did join Marmot full-time and worked with them for several years. We expanded, so after I started at Marmot, I was working solely on what was Viewfind at that time for Marmot. In 2013, we decided to add discovery partners. So this was kind of a limited relationship where libraries could join as non-voting members or discovery partners, kind of join the consortium and get some support just for Aspen, or I'm sorry, just for PICA and Viewfind. And that was, Click was originally a discovery partner. In 2016, we did rename from Viewfind or Viewfind Plus to PICA just because of some of the just confusion around what was Viewfind, what was PICA. Basically, the two had grown apart, serving different needs. PICA was largely had a target audience of public libraries as well as consortia, and Viewfind remained primarily an academic discovery layer. So there were quite a few differences in installation, differences in support, that kind of thing. In 2019, I started Aspen Discovery and joined Bywater to deliver that. And basically what we wanted to do was grow the software a little quicker than could be done within a consortium, as well as provide it to more libraries. So we really wanted to make sure that more libraries could benefit and increase the support. So by partnering with an organization like Bywater that's known for outstanding support, we're just able to serve libraries that much better. Yeah, so some of the goals that we have at Bywater for our discovery product, so for Aspen, and each of those open source products have kind of different goals, which is why you see that there's different ones. So we've got 4 different open source discovery products that we've identified, and some of those are different based off different goals or different underlying technology. So like Blacklight is a Ruby on Rails platform, whereas the other ones are kind of based more off PHP and Java. And our goals for discovery are maximizing patron usage of all library materials. So we want to make sure that patrons can use all of the materials that everybody's buying, whether that's physical materials, digital archives, events, website content that you're doing. We really want to make sure libraries know what the library offers. We also want to make sure that we've got really good integrations. And we see that a lot with the ILS and the Econtent. So we like to say that anything you can do in your native Econtent or ILS you can do within Aspen, or at least that the patron can do. So we do want to be able to place holds, renew materials, freeze holds, get real-time availability. And we do that wherever we can using what's called the APIs, which is APIs are really just a way for two servers to communicate. So basically, Aspen can talk to, say, Overdrive. And right now we have complete integration with Overdrive, RB Digital, Hoopla, Cloud Library, and we're continually adding additional materials as well. Ease of use is a huge thing for patrons. We want to make sure that it's easy to use. I've been lucky over the years to be able to sit down and really hundreds of usability studies with patrons to be sure that what we're giving them is easy to use. If a patron can't use it, then you might as well not deliver it. So we've been lucky to validate that and make sure that it works well. Also, administrators need to be able to customize it. No two libraries are the same. No two libraries within the same consortium are the same. So we want to be able to customize what materials are shown so that local collections aren't shown within a consortium to members that may not have access to it. And we want to personalize the display interface with colors, with layouts, so that administrators can do what they want with it. And then obviously the last thing is affordability. So at Bywater, we're aggressive with our support pricing to help you use it so that it's easy and doesn't break the bank for you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Passy again with Uena County. So when we were looking at discovery layers, first off, we loved Koha. We loved the support we'd had from Bywater Solutions. But we kind of looked across the state line over into Colorado at what Marmot Library Network had done with PICA. And we're just really impressed with that and said, you know, if there ever becomes a day where we could access something like that, we'd love to do that. We'd love to jump on that. And it worked out that Mark and Bywater started working together, and we implemented Aspen Discovery really to accomplish a few goals. We wanted to kind of move from the mall sort of thing where you go into each different vendor and have a different checkout experience for your e-content to something that was unified through one account, through one place to find all that stuff. We wanted a FRBR-ized display of catalog records. If someone's searching for a book, they want to see the book, but also what other ways is that book represented? Do we have a movie? Do we have an audio book? Or those kinds of things. And one thing that was really key for us is we have had about 20 years worth of experience digitizing local historic content and putting that online through the University of Utah, Marriott Library, and the Mountain West Digital Library. But we became aware that a lot of that content wasn't being noticed by local audiences. So we were looking for a way that we could address that. And we have a preference for open source software in Uena County. We've had a very positive experience being able to see where adjustments and refinements could be made. And sometimes with more proprietary software, you can submit an enhancement request that may or may not be on that vendor's priority list, but in open source software, something's on your priority list, and you either have the technical capacity or can work with the support company and round up funding, you can present and propose a lot of those things and help lead the development of the product, which was something that was very important to us. And eventually, we wanted to get to a point where you could go to one site to discover resources, be they things you can check out or download or stream, even events. The goal was kind of like if you did a search for parenting, that you'd be able to see all of the resources and events and things relevant to parenting or story time or whatever that need is. with the idea that a lot of times people that are searching for a catalog or searching in a catalog are there because they haven't found something. They've been looking around, they haven't found it, and they might not know to look in the library's calendar for something that's relevant or look in this one database. And so this was why we looked at Aspen Discovery, and we're really happy to be a partner with Bywater on this project.
So on the Aspencat side, we actually started with Pica, as Mark mentioned, and we were in desperate need of a catalog solution because we are a very large consortium, mostly of small libraries, and often when we migrate somebody into our consortium, they may have been a standalone library with who knows what ability to catalog, who knows what standards were being used. So we get a lot of bad data in, we get a lot of duplicate records, we get a lot of brief records. The end result of that is a not very pretty picture on our catalog. Very difficult for patrons to find things. So we were looking for a solution to that problem, and at that time, Pica was through the record grouping. I see we have a question about the FRBR-ization, and we're going to demonstrate what that actually looks like soon. But that was a way to clean up our mess, not so much on the staff side, but on the patron side. Made things a lot easier to use. So I think we can move on. So this is an example of a search for Tom Sawyer just in a normal catalog, where you're seeing a lot of different different material types, different titles, just different records. In this case, you get 2,054 results just using Tom Sawyer, just because everybody's, in some cases it's a duplicate of the same record. In other cases, it is legitimately on different records because they're different editions, different formats. Regardless, if you're a patron and you have to wade through 2,000 results just to get Tom Sawyer, you're not going to be very happy. So, so this is what it looks like in Aspen Discovery. So you've got things grouped together, and this is the FRBR-ization in action, where you can see formats are coming together, editions are coming together. So if you were to click on that show editions, it will then kind of, and you want a specific copy, it will show you that mess. So you can go ahead and advance. And this is what it looks like when you click that show editions. You can actually see all these different editions on there. And if you want a particular one, you can go ahead and get it. But if you just want a copy of Tom Sawyer, all you have to do is just press the hold button, and it will find you one, and then that will show up in whatever your ILS is as a hold on a particular copy. So that whole process makes the ease of use for patrons a whole different experience. So instead of hunting and pecking through 78 of these different records just for book types, they all come together in one place where there's one point to hit a hold, to place a hold. Ease of use makes a huge difference, and patrons are more likely to use a library system again if they have a good experience, if it's an easy experience, than if it's a confusing and frustrating experience. So, so this kind of gets into a little bit more about how the FRBR-ized display works. So we want to group together printed books, different editions, downloadable content. So I can see in the chat there's that conversation about ebooks, and you can see in this that ebooks are grouped right in there. So we get all those in there. Movies we tend to not have on the same record grouping. So if you're looking for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, you know, I guess in some cases you might be like, well, I was going to read the book, but since you have the movie, I'll watch that instead. But a lot of times we choose to not group those together because usually you're either going for a reading experience or an audio listening experience on one side or a movie experience on another side.
So one of the things that we noticed in previous life previous to Aspen Discovery is if you did that search for something like Harry Potter, here's an example from a Koha catalog, the relevancy, which is really good in general, it still, for whatever reason, brings things that people might not expect to the top of the list, like the Essential Film Music Collection or the Magic Eye book, where when that same search is done in Aspen Discovery, its relevancy ranking boosts that book up to the top, and it'll typically display, if it's a book in a series, it'll display those book series in order, again, show you the different formats that you can use, where that is, if it's on shelf or it's available from another library, a user can place that hold. And then if you'll notice above the search result, there's also the buttons where you can select by item type, something that's really patron friendly. A lot of patrons don't always think to look in a drop-down box to click on some kind of facet, but if there's an icon they can click on and say, hey, I'm only interested in audiobooks, then they can click that and it'll filter the results accordingly. But we've been really impressed with the way that patrons have been able to use this service with really no staff mediation. Previous OPACs from a few different vendors, we would get a lot of, hey, how do I do this? We used to have classes on how to use the OPAC in the library, and we felt like we really needed to get away from that. We needed a tool that was user-friendly enough that people could just use with no advanced training, is intuitive, and we feel like we have that here in Aspen Discovery. And I think Mark's going to tell us a little bit more about some of the magic secret sauce that goes into this and how we're really promoting readers advisory and reader services, which benefits patrons and staff, especially new staff who don't have years of experience in readers advisory.
Yeah, we've got a couple of different readers advisory tools built in, as well as just different content enrichment. So we have personalized reading recommendations, and we'll talk about it a little bit more on the next slide. But basically, they're working based off of patrons' ratings, because we don't want to do it just based off either things that they're seeing in the catalog, the way Amazon will kind of do sometimes, where you just happen to look at garden rakes and get suggestions for garden rakes for the next month. Or even what's in our reading history, because like if I'm checking books out for my kids, I don't necessarily want a bunch of reading recommendations for the next, for Hop on Pop or whatever. I just want books that I want to read. And we accomplish that through kind of a more like this functionality, which is based off a lot of the information in the catalog itself, so a lot of the subjects, reading levels, that kind of thing. We will also use NoveList, so we get series information as well as similar titles, similar authors, similar series information to help people with the reader's advisory. That does require a subscription to NoveList. Patrons or libraries can also turn on Goodreads. That comes for free if you want to include that in. We'll integrate covers as well as reviews, content enrichment from Syndetics and Content Cafe. You can get covers from Google Books and the Open Movie Database. And the Google Books and Open Movie Database can give you a good representation of covers if you don't subscribe to Syndetics or Content Cafe. So it's some options to make sure that your materials do have covers when possible. If we don't have a good cover from one of those sources, we'll generate one automatically that looks professional and matches your library's colors and that kind of thing. We'll also get accelerated reader data automatically, so that downloads every week to libraries that want it and can be integrated directly within your catalog. And there's no additional charge for that as well. If we want to go to the next slide. So this is looking at some of that reader's advisory some more. So if we click on the rating for becoming, then it will show up in our titles you rated. And based off of that, we're going to get recommendations. And these recommendations can show either within your account or they can be shown on the homepage. So as we're browsing the collection, we get other recommendations of things you might like. And when we do those recommendations, we're doing it based off what you've rated most recently, for the most part. But as you get farther down the recommendations list, it's kind of a little bit more broad, everything that you've rated. Do we want to look at NoveList next?
Yeah, this is really exciting for our libraries. For some reason, we just haven't had as much success getting patrons to rate stuff and get recommendations that way. But this is always like a showstopper when I'm talking, when I'm training existing libraries or talking to libraries coming in, because we've all had a situation, if we've ever worked worked in a library in a reader's advisory situation where somebody's asked you about a title or a type of novel and they want a recommendation, but you have no idea, you've not read it. And so what you can do with this NoveList is if somebody says they like Harry Bosch, you do the Harry Bosch search, you go through and you can get similar titles directly from NoveList Plus that's integrated right into the catalog. And you can see there's similar series, there's similar titles, and there's similar authors as well. So without even knowing anything about this particular series, you can still provide great reader's advisory, because NoveList, if you're not familiar with it, is a database that's curated by librarians. So they have these descriptions that a patron can then read and look and go, oh yeah, you know what? I think I do want to start the Jack Reacher series because I do like the Bosch series so much. Or some less obvious ones as well are also in there. So all those linkages are pre-populated and just make it a lot easier for people to provide reader's advisory to readers who read different things than they do.
Okay, so one of the things that patrons have asked for years is, why doesn't the catalog work more like Amazon or Google, where I start typing things and it offers me suggestions? As many of you know, patron spelling and employee spelling, for that matter, can be all over the place. This is great because when you start typing, Aspen Discovery offers search suggestions for you, and you can click on that and you get a nice clean result. Let's see. Browsing again is this has been absolutely wonderful for us. We can set up these browse categories based on a search, based on different criteria, a manual list that staff members make to highlight an event or a series, whatever you want to feature, really. And so a lot of people that are just browsing, especially right now when many libraries are offering a curbside type service, but their doors are closed with the current national situation, this is a great way for them to basically be able to browse and for you to draw attention to things. Whatever you could think of, you can make a category for. We found that this has been a great way to highlight things that might not necessarily come up in people might not normally think of that they might be interested in. For example, we've had a Canopy subscription to the Great Courses, and we've had a lot of people asking us, hey, why don't you get a service like the Great Courses? We've said, well, we actually have them. but no one knew to think to go search Canopy, let alone did they know Canopy existed and it was a streaming movie service. But now that we've created a browse category that says watch the great courses, and people can do that. Here again, you can see that one of those browsing tabs, if you are logged in, is a recommended for you. And so that's a great way for patrons to come in and see what the library has. Like Bob said, discover an author that they might not have thought about. And it's been a really wonderful tool. And now, one of the things is, going back to the spelling, there's a lot of common misspellings and things, and Aspen Discovery does some search correction. Here's an example for Chronicles of Narnia, which was spelled wrong, and it searches, it'll show you results for something that's spelled correctly, and then of course you can override that and search for what you had typed in there. But again, this is a great patron helper and removes a lot of the frustration. And then on the next slide, we really wanted to create a one-stop shop for checking out. And so here you can log into your library account, and Aspen Discovery works with the underlying ILS and the third-party providers to sign you in and authenticate you to your normal library catalog account. In our case, that's Koha, Overdrive, RB Digital, what have you. So it really integrates those resources. And we have a situation right now where usually, for whatever reason, Overdrive will have a huge wait list on a given title. That same title might be available in RB Digital with no wait list, might be always available. And this system allows your institution to set it up to show, I want you to show all the ebooks, but I want you to break it out by provider so people know, okay, the Overdrive has 10 people on wait, but the RB Digital or the 3M or Cloud Library has no wait list, so I'll use that one instead. And it's a single sign-on. Aspen does a lot of the work. Sometimes on the first go round with using a service like RB Digital will require just a little bit more information than maybe is in the Koha account. So Aspen Discovery will complete the registration form partially and say, hey, we did our best to fill this thing out, but we need a little bit more information. And then the patron can enter that information, the rest of it in, and save it. And once it's saved in there, they never have to mess with that again. So if I check something out, I can place a hold, I can check out in any of these fully integrated services, and then have the content show up in the relevant app, or just browse or stream it right through my web browser if that's my preference. And again, when you look at your account screen, we have some very nice features here for looking at what you have checked out from the various providers. If something needs to be renewed, it'll warn you that the due date's coming up in, say, 7 days. If your underlying ILS supports automatic renewals, you can turn that feature on or not at your discretion. One of the things people really like is that they can see all their checkouts from all of the different providers in one spot. And also, there's a really nice reading history that's an opt-in sort of thing, so it maintains privacy. I think Bob's going to tell us a little bit more about some of the things that Aspen Discovery does to support consortiums.
Yeah, so this map that you can see here is all of our libraries, and you can see it's color-coded because we have different kinds of libraries. We have public libraries, we have school libraries, we have special libraries, and we have academic libraries. So with that variety of needs, we need something that's very flexible. First off the bat is libraries have different, like particularly schools, they have logos, they have branding and sort of stuff, that sort of stuff. But even public libraries have particular logos and branding too. A lot of our libraries are a little smaller, so we do have a default setting if they don't have anything particular. But if they want to customize those, they can certainly customize that look to look like the look of their website, which leads to a more cohesive experience for the user. There's also other configuration options in the settings. So one of the things that's been nice about Aspen Discovery is, and I think I failed to mention, we moved over from Pica to that just because of some of these type of supports. We were happy with Marmot and Pica and the product they were doing, but they were developing it more for a III based system, and we are on Koha. And so once Aspen joined forces with Bywater, and Bywater's our hosting company, it made a lot of sense to move over. So some of the things that have changed are things like being able to easily set like an elementary school template for a lot of settings. If we have somebody in elementary school that wants to do something different than those default settings, we can do that. But we could set it up so we have this template, and that allows us to quickly change for a lot of different libraries. Because when you get over 100 libraries, I can tell you it takes a lot of work to have to do every single thing, every single change by hand. So we set up these templates, which is really nice to manage. And if there are exceptions, we can do that as well. We can also do different things with holdings and how they're scoped. Some libraries prefer to see their collection first and then open it up to a broader Aspencat search to see all the materials. Some libraries do not participate in our resource sharing, so they just want to see their collection. And then some libraries do a lot of resource sharing, and they want patrons to see everything first, and then they have the ability to narrow down to just one library. And then there's the ability to do different roles for a particular library. So I just was working with a library that's going to be up with a brand new feature, uploading PDFs, because they're a special library and they have a lot of government documents. And so I was able to give them specific permissions to do that, which allows them to do that, but does not create is not something I have to assign to every single library, and it doesn't mean that I assign them all the permissions. They just have the ability to do certain tasks. So when you're dealing with a variety in a consortium, this gives, even if it's just a district with multiple branches, this gives you a lot of opportunity to really meet the needs of everybody in their unique ways.
I'm going to unmute myself. So I mentioned earlier, one of the things that is a priority for us is working with our archival and special collections branch. We have a regional history center that's been around for 30 plus years, 20 years digitization experience. And each year we average about 136,000 hits on our digital collections that are hosted at the University of Utah. And they're a fabulous partner and do an amazing job and do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. However, these collections have largely gone unnoticed by the people that are the subject of the photos and documents, and whose tax money is, in many cases, paying for the service to be digitized. And so we sought to be able to increase that visibility, so people can do a search by Open Archive, which in our case pulls collections from the University of Utah and the Utah Government Digital Library, a few other places where we have things. if someone's doing a book search and there's a relevant item from the digital collections, it'll show in an Explore More bar. And that bar can show objects, genealogy records if we put them in there. It can show a number of different types of items. But again, our History Center uses its standard digitization process. A lot of places use a tool like Content DM, whatever that is, it doesn't change. Aspen Discovery with Bywater support, in our case, it was able to access the harvester and index those collections. And so we're just in finished our first year with this, but we're already starting to see local usage go up. So far this year, we've had 232 hits on the archival sources. And again, that's local use that typically we might not see, because you really have to be part of a research community to be aware of a service like the Mountain West Digital Library or some of the wonderful, amazing content on these university pages. And so this is a great tool to make it available locally. And we're really excited here. Mark has just developed for us a wonderful new tool to integrate events, and people can search events that are happening at the library or in many cases online. You'll see on the screen right now that there's an event, an item from the archive, and some catalog records showing up in that Explore More. So Mark's going to tell us some more about that.
Yeah, so this was a new feature that was just added yesterday, but it gives the ability to kind of search and promote library events, in this case, that are stored in library calendar from Library Market, and we'll add support for additional vendors as well. So just like we support any ILS vendor, so whether you're using Sierra or Symphony or Koha, you can use Aspen Discovery. We want the same thing with events. So whether you're using Library Calendar or LibCal, whatever kind of tool you're using to store those, we want to be able to support that. Functionality might look a little bit different, but in this case, we've got the ability to, much like the digital archives Sam was talking about, we've got the ability to highlight events within the Explore More. So this is the whole, we want to make sure that patrons see all of the great things libraries are doing and be able to take advantage of them. So if you're searching for yoga, maybe you find the yoga story time. If you're searching for story time, you can find the story times that are online now. Those events can be customized by the libraries within a consortium. So typically each library will subscribe to their own events calendar. If that is not the case, it's going to depend a little bit on which vendor you're using. But for example, if you had a consortium and you were just entering by branch, you could select which branches were shown within each library. So similar to that, we've got the ability to index websites. So a lot of times people will just bookmark your catalog and kind of forget that the main website's there. And so we wanted the ability to bring in results from the website. So in this case, if somebody's doing a search for meeting room, we can see that there's several pages related to meeting rooms. And that's, again, something that could be done per library within a consortium. So each library has a different homepage and website. And basically, it's just going through and spidering the entire website in order to generate those results. One thing you'll notice kind of throughout this is we do put a lot of those kind of secondary things into the Explore More, because we don't want really a federated search. So if somebody's searching for yoga, they probably don't want to see your yoga event first, they probably also don't necessarily want to see it on the 10th page, because then they never find it. So we want to kind of highlight some of those different silos that make sense to be stored in their own silo, make sense to be searched in their own silo, within the main catalog results. And same thing, if you're searching the archive, you would get catalog results. So it's a nice way of letting people find what's most relevant to them most easily. A couple other ways we have to do that. So we've got collection spotlights. So these are ways that you can embed catalog results within your website. So if on your web page you've got a digital branch, so we can have new fiction, new nonfiction, DVDs, ebooks. We can highlight these within your website. We have, I think, about 5 different styles now that you can do. Within those, you can customize them as much or as little as you want. So you can have them auto-rotate, you can choose size of covers, you can choose whether or not titles are shown. You've got a lot of control over it, and it's all as easy as just embedding an iframe. And we found that an iframe is really easy for libraries to do, and really all of the vendors that are supporting website creation are generally supporting iframe. So making it easy for you to highlight those collections better. And those can be any search or any search or any list that you're creating. We also have placard functionality. So this is a way for some of those resources where people don't provide MARC records, they don't have APIs, there's not really a great way to highlight them within the catalog, but they're really, really important, really valuable resources that a lot of times we're spending a lot of money on, so we want to make sure people find it. So what we have the ability to do is create placards, and these are customizable by the library. They're basically a little like banner that shows up based off your search. So whether you're searching for Mango languages, or maybe you're searching for learn Spanish or learn French, or maybe just Spanish or maybe just French, we can pop up those banners. And you can customize those again. So you can say these are dismissible by patrons. So if I am doing a bunch of searching for learning Spanish and learning French and that kind of thing, and maybe I'm a French teacher at the local school, and I'm doing a lot of those searches, I don't want to see this banner every time I pop up, or every time I'm searching the catalog doing my normal stuff. I'm allowed to dismiss it. So you've got a lot of control over what that is to highlight collections that might otherwise be really hard to do.
I will say that we use that placard for ebook help because we developed a pretty basic visual, and so it's perfect for that. So we've entered the search terms that we think somebody might be looking for that, and then they would come across that visual, and that would hopefully get them pointed in the right direction and getting to their ebooks.
So for us, when we switched to Aspen Discovery after a year, we have seen a 75% increase in holds and transfers, particularly coming from other locations, as the system is, the thing that I get asked all the time is, what are patrons saying about the new system? And the reality is, we don't really hear a lot, because when things work well, people tend to not say anything. It's just when you have a problem, they hear about things. But so we've been watching the data. We've seen a 75% increase in holds and transfers, and we suspect that's because it's so much easier for patrons to see that things exist. Some people have been intimidated to ask for help in our previous catalog, or ask a staff member who looks too busy to help them. You know, as much as we try and look approachable, sometimes we're not. So we've been really pleased with this, and we've made use of the placards. There's a neat genealogy tool that we've started using.
Yeah, To add to that, I don't have any good stats because I didn't collect them when we initially moved from our old provided catalog to PICA. But we saw in some cases, I know, well over 100%. And some libraries, it's hard to measure because they come on and they've never done resource sharing. And so having a good discovery layer is only one component of that. So it's hard to get a great number on that, but I know it made a significant difference the moment we switched over, probably in lines with what Sam's libraries are seeing, if not more.
So ways to contribute to the community, we're certainly, or Jesse, did you want to talk through this one? Or?
It's okay. I was talking and then totally realized I was on mute. Oh, so, you know, Mark and Bob and Sam have all given some really good overview of things that you can do with Aspen, and community is just another great way that you can contribute and be a part of the discovery platform, whether it's contributing to the website, you know, portion, integration, as Sam mentioned, the archival repository. Bob mentioned how they're adding the PDF option for some of their new parks and wildlife. There's always something that you can bring to the community. And that's the big part that we like to talk about with open source is if there's something that you want, you know, you work with community members, you work with the developers to make that happen. And so, you know, we love being part of the open source community and being able to work together with libraries to make those goals happen.
And I just want to say, I hope that community builds around it the same way that there is for Koha, or even if it's different, even if there's more of forking, which is kind of the way that things have gone with Viewfind, Pika, Aspen Discovery, Blacklight that we can all see here. There's still a lot of cool ways for each of these individual instances to develop awesome things that then can be absorbed back into another one. So the more we see use and people, whether you're going Aspen Discovery or something else, the more everybody benefits from it.
Absolutely. So you'll see here, there's, you know, we have a few different links. What the presenters are using today, Aspen and prior Pika. For academics, there is Viewfind, and then of course, Blacklight. We are going to open it up for questions. We have about 5 to 10 more minutes. If there are questions that we can answer, I know there were some that came through during the presentation that we answered in the chat and Q&A. But if there's any other questions, we'd love to be able to answer those. Or if you want to see something live, we'd be happy to, you know, share our screen and show you that as well.
Well, we're waiting for questions to come in. Can you jump back up to the genealogy slide, number 25? It's brand new. Oops. Maybe. Version control. There we go. So for years, we have had a lot of genealogies, a lot of genealogy records and cemetery mapping and things like that going on. But similar to some of our other tools, no one but the staff knew that you could search these. And in many cases, you had to be a staff member with the specific client software to search those records. And so we were pleasantly surprised when we learned that Aspen Discovery had a built-in tool for managing some basic genealogy stuff. You can add photos of people, headstones, obituary text, And then this is all searchable. Hit the drop down, choose genealogy records, and we look to continue to explore some of the community history aspect sides of this. Whatever your community's into, you can really make Aspen work for. Thank you.
So there was a question about if anybody has combined the website into the product to combine both the catalog and the website. That is what some of the searching websites is designed to do. We're doing some work at Uintah County to do even more integration, but that's kind of early stages right now. So check back with us in a few months on that, and we'll let you know. There was another question about examples of enhancements the community has contributed to Aspen. A lot of that right now, I would say, is not necessarily from code, but it's through ideas. And I would say really nearly everything in terms of enhancements are things that are coming from the community. So we're working closely with Bob and Sam and all of our other partners to talk through different ideas in terms of what enhancements are high priority, what should we be doing next, getting those ideas. So things like placards came out of the community. Things like the open movie database was a suggestion from somebody who's not actually even a partner. So pointing us to those resources so that we've got ideas of things to build.
One of our big reasons why we wanted to move over was Aspen Discovery had built a functioning API with Koha, whereas what we were doing with Pike is we were connected, but we were reliant on MARC exports and things like that. And so things were sometimes a little bit slower to show up, so big deal. And during our migration process, one of the things that we're like, because of the amount of libraries we had, that's where we started to talk to Mark about, hey, is there any way you could make this simpler, the setup simpler on the administration side? And then he identified several different ways in which we could, as I was speaking about earlier, make some of those administrative things and setup something that you could set for a group of libraries versus having to do it for each individual library. So a lot of those things that have just come up as needs have arisen. And so we've had a lot of success in getting our ideas and our needs focused on.
And then there was a question about whether or not Aspen was a Koha add-on or a separate product. It is a separate product. It does need its own server, its own hosting. It works very, very well with Koha, but it will also work with any ILS as well. So, and then there was also a question about if content DM integration was available, and that is available. It's in active use by some of our partners, and it's that digital archive integration that you see where we're using it's an API called OAI PMH, which does the harvesting, and that's where you see the digital archive results within the Explore More and its own search results as well.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Bob, Sam, and Mark for presenting today to the group. If there are any other questions that we can answer, our information is up on the slides, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions. Take care, everybody, and stay safe. Thank you.
I know.
Thanks.
Thank you.